Exposed, how an incredible 3B transformation followed a heartwarming encounter at a charity gala in the heart of Springfield, a flicker of hope ignited during an extravagant gala, where dreams teetered on the edge of reality. Grace Thompson, a 32-year-old single mother juggling plates and kids, was caught between her tireless waitressing shifts and visions of a brighter future. She stood in a shimmering dress 2 sizes too big, but it was the reflection of her children's laughter in her eyes that sparkled the most. That evening, against the backdrop of wealth and glamour, she felt like a ghost haunting a world that seemed miles away. The clink of champagne glasses was like a siren's call, pulling her toward unattainable dreams. She watched as affluent guests laughed uproariously, their faces illuminated by the glint of excess. Her heart ached for her little ones. "This could be our life," she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek, and then, it happened. A chance encounter with Jack Harrington, the billionaire who was synonymous with wealth, shattered the air. Standing tall, dressed impeccably, he was everything she held at arm's length. Grace could hardly hide her disdain as she watched him smirk, his gaze scanning the room, indifferent to the everyday struggles of the community beyond those golden doors. "What can people like me offer him?" she thought, frustration pooling in her chest. As Jack approached, a peculiar tug-of-war started within him. There, he caught Grace's eye, her fiery spirit evident even behind her mask of resolute professionalism. They stood face to face, a jarring contrast of privilege and struggle. Jack was immediately intrigued, yet he found himself wrestling with conflicting thoughts about how distant he felt from the lives people like Grace led. Before the evening could devolve further into awkwardness, the night erupted into chaos. An old building ignited nearby, a firestorm consuming local businesses, a community's heart reduced to ash. Panic pressed down like a heavy weight. Grace's instincts kicked in, sharper than any knife she'd wielded in the diner. Her loyalty to her children, her neighbors, her community, ignited a fierce determination. She dashed out, her heart pounding like a war drum. "I have to do something." Jack stood frozen for a moment, the heat of the flames illuminating the reality he had chosen to overlook. Then he saw her, a force of nature, gathering her neighbors, coaxing the frightened into action. His chest tightened as admiration flooded in. Grace was inspiring change, and he began to question everything he had believed about himself. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The fire raged on, but unity blossomed as Grace led the charge for relief efforts. Her voice rose above the chaos, a blend of power and compassion. Jack watched in awe, feeling newfound responsibility tinge every breath he took. He hadn't just stepped into a burning crisis, he had walked into an awakening. As the residents rallied, holding hands and sharing courage, Jack knew he could no longer turn a blind eye. He felt the walls he had built begin to crack. He could invest, he could change. But another question nagged at him: could he connect with a community he had neglected for so long, or would he always be the outsider looking in? When the smoke cleared, both Grace and Jack stood on the brink of transformation. Would she embrace her new role as a community leader? And could he forge genuine relationships, bridging the divide of their worlds? The air was thick with uncertainty as their eyes locked. Futures shimmering in the unknown. The promise of change lingered, vibrant yet fragile, waiting to burst forth into something extraordinary. In the aftermath of the fire, the community gathered like moths to a flame, rallied by one shared purpose: rebuilding. Grace stood at the center of it, her heart pounding with adrenaline and determination. She looked at the faces around her, some worn with worry, others lit with fierce resolve. They were all in this together, and for the first time, she felt the weight of their trust resting on her shoulders. Jack stepped forward, hesitance in his eyes. The billionaire, usually accustomed to managing financial crises with spreadsheets and figures, found himself grappling with a new reality. This community wasn't about profit or loss, it was about people. As he watched Grace organize volunteers, he felt an unfamiliar tug at his conscience. She searched the crowd for faces she recognized, her voice commanding yet warm, coaxing those around her into action. "We can do this," Grace encouraged, her resolve radiating through the crowd. "It may feel like the ground has crumbled beneath us, but look. Look at what we can build together." Her words ignited a spark in the onlookers, most of whom had felt overshadowed by weighty uncertainty. They nodded, a collective heartbeat echoing in the morning air. "Jack!" she called out suddenly, breaking him from his thoughts. "We could use your help. You know, resources and connections." She hesitated. Wasn't he part of what had led to the fall? Jack's gut twisted at the realization of her plight. I'm here," he replied slowly, trying to sound confident, but unsure if he had any right to be part of this moment, as his world had been so far removed from theirs. Yet, he could see how desperately they needed someone willing to step up, someone they could trust. As they combined their strengths, Grace organized a community meeting to discuss their next steps, while Jack reached out to his connections for support. They gathered at the local community center, a simple space that had witnessed countless stories both joyous and heartbreaking. Would they unlock new chapters together? People filled the chairs, anxiety mingling with hope in the air. Grace started by telling her story as much for them as for herself. She expressed the dreams she held while working night shifts, the weight of responsibility resting heavily on her, the laughter of her children pushing her to go on. Jack watched as she spoke, feeling a connection grow, as if the sheer vulnerability draped them in a thread of mutual understanding. Then it was his turn. Jack stood up, gripping the edge of the table. The faces looking back at him were not ones he was used to addressing. "I haven't always been part of this community," he began, his voice steady yet trembling at the edges. "But I want to change that. I want to help us rise from the ashes and create something that can support our families." A murmur ran through the crowd. Skepticism clashed with hope. Could this man privileged and distant truly connect with them? Grace's heart raced. She wanted to believe him, she needed to. But doubt swirled like smoke, testing her resolve. What if this was just another wealthy act of charity disconnected from the real struggles? But as the conversations flowed through the hum of the community center, she felt a gentle tug in her heart. Was it possible that Jack really meant it? That maybe they could harness their strengths, his resources, and her drive? As the meeting concluded and the people began to disperse, Grace caught Jack's eye. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than just the beginning," he replied, his voice resonating with a new authenticity she hadn't heard before. "It's a chance to change everything." Yet, underneath the layer of optimism, both were keenly aware that their road ahead was still fraught with obstacles. Would the community accept him? Would Grace continue to trust him after everything? The air buzzed with anticipation, as though it too was waiting for the figures of change to emerge from the shadows. As Grace looked around at her neighbors, strong and resilient, she couldn't shake the feeling that their unity was fragile. She took a deep breath, knowing that together they might carve out a future that none of them could ever predict. But could she let her guard down enough to truly embrace this partnership? With uncertainty looming ahead, both realized they had much to learn about each other and the true meaning of community together. They were on the precipice of something extraordinary. But the question lingered in the air: who would lead, and who would follow when it truly mattered? The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, as Grace stood outside the community center, absorbing the day's events. The sounds of chatter and laughter began to fade, leaving her with the quiet weight of her thoughts. She could feel the flicker of hope that had begun to light up the hearts of her neighbors, but beneath that thin veil of optimism lingered doubt. Jack emerged from the crowd, a mass of energy and uncertainty. He approached Grace cautiously, hands shoved deep into his pockets, a crease of worry etched on his forehead. I didn't expect it to go like that, he admitted, glancing around as if he were searching for confirmation. Did I do okay? Grace crossed her arms, considering his question. You were honest. That counts for something, she replied, her voice steady even if her heart was racing. Do you think they'll actually trust me? Or was that just a polite nod to a wealthy visitor? Jack's voice broke slightly, exposing his vulnerability. It unfolded like a map of insecurities she hadn't seen before. Trust isn't something you buy, Jack, she replied, her tone softening. It's built over time, with effort and genuine action. They want to see that you care. They stood in silence for a moment, the last few community members trickling out. Grace took a deep breath, looking towards the horizon where the lingering light shimmered. If you want to change their minds, you'll have to put in the work. No more corporate jargon, just real talk. Jack nodded, digesting her straightforward advice. He felt the weight of her words. It wasn't about the money he could throw at problems. It was about understanding the struggle, listening to the stories. The realization swirled in his mind like a sudden storm, unraveling all the misconceptions he had held. As they headed back inside to gather the final supplies, the sounds of footsteps echoed against the wooden floors. The community center would need a makeover, a fresh coat of paint, a few new tables, and a warm, welcoming environment where they could gather and heal. How about we tackle this place first? He suggested, a spark igniting in his chest. I can get some of my connections to sponsor the renovations, and donations can go directly to rebuilding efforts. The idea hung in the air, causing Grace's heart to do backflips. You really think that will connect you with them? It's a start, he replied with newfound determination. We can plan some events to draw the community and make it feel more like home again. Her heart swelled at the thought. It was something they could work on together, a tangible goal where they could see real progress. Yes. We can create a space where people can share, learn, and teach. We could even start a community garden. Jack smiled wider than she'd seen before, an openness that made him appear vulnerable yet powerful at the same time. See? We can combine our strengths. But as they talked, an uneasy thought gnawed at Grace. What if they failed? What if their plan didn't resonate as she hoped? Narrowing her gaze, she glanced at Jack. There's a lot at stake. If this doesn't work, then we keep trying, he said, his voice steady. Together. The words hung between them, binding them in a shared promise. But the tension of the uncertainty still prickled at her. The road ahead was winding, and the community would always be watching. As they stepped outside into the crisp evening air, Grace sensed something stirring beneath the surface. She needed to trust Jack, not just as a partner but as part of a growing family. Jack. He turned to her, anticipation in his eyes. What if this is about more than just rebuilding the community? She asked, her voice faltering ever so slightly. What if we are in the middle of something bigger than we realize? What do you mean? He inquired, his brow furrowed. Grace hesitated, feeling the gravity of her words. What if this could teach us something about ourselves, about every person here? Jack's puzzled expression turned contemplative. You mean, our stories could change everything, she answered, a wave of excitement and fear washing over her. The moment lingered, charged with possibility. Just then, an elderly neighbor approached them, eyes glimmering with hope. Are you two going to help us rebuild? Because we could really use the hands. Jack and Grace exchanged glances, the weight of expectation settling in tighter. Yes, we are, Jack replied with a confidence that surprised even himself. As they joined the neighbor, Grace's pulse quickened. With every step they took together, it felt like they were crossing into new, uncharted territory. It was exhilarating, but what awaited them there? What would they discover about the community and themselves? In the depths of her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just rebuilding. In a sense, they were all reinventing their stories. The question became clearer with each breath: could they really change the narrative? The next day dawned bright and clear, the sun fully awake and shimmering down on the community center. Grace and Jack met early, eager to begin planning their first steps. The scent of fresh coffee and donuts flickered through the air, wrapping around them like an embrace. "Good morning. You ready to dive in?" Jack said, his energy evident as he placed a donut in front of her with a cheeky grin. Grace chuckled, feeling lighter than she had in days. "I thought we were here to talk about community renovations, not donuts." He shrugged, taking a bite. "A good start is always sweet, right?" They settled at a table, a blank canvas in front of them. Jack pulled out a notepad and pencil, his brow furrowing in playful concentration. "So, community garden or renovation first?" Grace's heart danced with excitement. "Let us start with the community garden. It can serve as our first project where everyone comes together. It'll be a space for families, kids, and a way to get to know the people." "Sounds good. We can set up volunteer days, maybe even a potluck for the opening." His voice was animated, and Grace felt hope blossom anew. She sketched ideas, the thoughts flowing faster than she could put them down. As they discussed plans, the door creaked open. One by one, neighbors began to trickle in, curiosity written all over their faces. "What's all this?" asked Mrs. Henderson, her white hair glowing in the morning light. Jack looked up, excitement sparking in his eyes. "We're putting together a community garden. We'd love your help." Mrs. Henderson's eyes brightened. "I have the perfect space in my yard. Let us make it a collective garden." A conversation bloomed as more neighbors joined, and soon laughter replaced the tension in the air. Grace grinned at Jack, her anticipation morphing into pure joy. It felt like a long-lost rhythm was being restored. But amidst the chatter, Grace noticed a few residents lingering at the edge, hesitant. She recognized them from the meeting, individuals who had seemed skeptical of Jack's intentions. "Hey," she whispered to Jack, nodding subtly towards them. "They didn't look too keen yesterday." Jack followed her gaze, his expression shifting from excitement to concern. "Maybe they need some reassurance?" "Reassurance? Or maybe we need to hear what they want to say." Grace felt a spark of bravery. "Let us go talk to them. It's crucial we address their doubts." Jack took a deep breath. "Okay, lead the way." As they approached, Grace felt her pulse quicken. The trio, they were frontline community members, people who carried weight in their voices. She stepped forward, offering a warm smile. "Good morning. We're really hoping to make this community garden happen, but we'd love to hear your thoughts." One man, tall with a lined face, folded his arms. "It sounds nice, but how do we know you really care? We've seen grand plans before." Jack squared his shoulders but spoke softly. "I understand where you're coming from. I guess it's a fair question. I want to build trust, not just provide donations. I'm here to listen and help in any way you need." The man's stance softened a touch. "It's not just about the garden. We want to keep this community alive." "What are you really offering?" "Real connections," Grace interjected. "Our struggles are intertwined. We can create a community that supports each other, really support. Not just in the garden, but in life. We'd love to hear your stories." The air thickened with tension, a silent moment where hearts hung in the balance. Just then, the woman beside the man broke into a slight smile. "You both seem different, Maybe it's worth trying." Jack and Grace exchanged glances, relief washing over them. "We promise to work hard to earn your trust," Jack assured them. As they discussed their fears, hopes, and dreams, Grace felt the air shift. Perhaps this was the turning point they needed, recognizing that true transformation happened not just in concrete walls and planted seeds but through shared stories and vulnerability. Yet, even as the warmth of budding connection surrounded them, an echo of doubt lingered in the back of Grace's mind. Could they truly build the trust necessary to change the script of their community? Days passed, filled with planning and forging connections, but deep down, Grace sensed an underlying tension. How far could Jack go to prove he meant it? Something, she felt, was still just out of reach, lurking between the whispers of the heart. As they stood at the bustling community center, surrounded by laughter and conversation, an unexpected truth hung in the air. What if not all change could be embraced willingly? And what if the greatest challenges were yet to come? Grace took a deep breath, ready for the journey that lay ahead, uncertain yet hopeful. But she couldn't shake the feeling. Could they really ignite the passion needed to fuel this transformation, or would they be met with hesitation once again? The next morning dawned with a heavy gray blanket of clouds, threatening rain. Grace and Jack gathered at the community center, the excitement of the previous days now tinged with a hint of anxiety. As they set up, decorations for the upcoming community garden launch laid scattered across the tables, the vibrancy of their colors dimmed under the looming overcast sky. "Do you think anyone will show up?" Jack asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. His voice was tinged with uncertainty, a stark contrast to his usual enthusiasm. Grace avoided his gaze for a moment, gazing out the window. "I hope so. We've worked hard to get here." The thought of empty chairs gnawed at her. Their many meetings, the laughter shared with neighbors, would all that be enough to draw the community out today? "I really believe in what we're doing," Jack said, his tone firm as he squeezed her shoulder. "And if it rains, we can still gather inside. People just need to know we're really here for them." She nodded, feeling the warmth of his encouragement seep in, but a shadow of doubt still lingered. As the clock ticked closer to the launch time, gray clouds swelled outside, growing darker and heavier. The drumming sound of raindrops began to patter against the roof, a symphony of uncertainty. Grace fought against the wave of disappointment rising in her chest. But then laughter. The sound filtered through the thick air. Jack's eyes lit up as a group appeared at the door, shaking off raindrops like eager puppies, bright umbrellas glimmering with colors. Mrs. Henderson led the pack, her cheer undeterred by the weather. "You didn't think a little rain would stop us, did you?" Grace felt her spirit lift as others joined in behind her, neighbors she had yet to meet, a few she'd only seen in passing. One came with a homemade pie, another brought potted herbs. The melting tension around her began to thaw, mirroring the sunlight they all hoped would break through. "Let us move inside. We can still plant the seeds of our garden, rain or shine," Jack announced, and his rallying cry ignited the room. Inside, laughter echoed off the walls, and Grace found herself surrounded by buzzing conversations. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the floral notes of potted blooms. She watched as families mingled, kids darting between adults, their smiles infectious. This was the kind of warmth she had hoped for. Taking a deep breath, Grace stepped away momentarily, both exhilarated and overwhelmed. In those connections, she felt a sense of purpose crystallizing that she hadn't fully acknowledged before. Yet, amid the laughter, a soft voice broke through. "Nice turnout, isn't it?" It was the tall man from days prior, standing near the punch bowl, his earlier skepticism replaced by curiosity. "It really is," Grace said with a smile, the lingering shadow of doubt replaced by gratitude. "I was skeptical at first," he admitted, his eyes scanning the mingling crowd, "but watching everyone here it feels different. You two seem to want to make it real." Jack joined them, a smile on his face. "We really do. It's all about bringing everyone together, right?" The man nodded, a weight visibly lifting off his shoulders. "We need that." As conversation continued, Grace noticed more folks edging their way into discussions. The earlier fears of hesitation melted away like the clouds outside. Still, beneath the excitement, she felt a flicker of unease. Was this just a momentary spark, or could it ignite the sustained change they needed? Just then, the doors blew open, a rush of wind swept through the room, and in walked some of the earlier skeptics, soaking wet but grinning. "We came to see what all the excitement was about," one of them exclaimed, their laughter making it clear they weren't putting on a show. At that moment, Grace knew the tide had shifted. But challenges still lay ahead, the kind that wouldn't dissipate with sunshine and laughter. As conversations deepened and stories began to intertwine, an unexpected revelation crept into Grace's mind. Maybe the true test of their transformation wouldn't only be in creating a garden but in nurturing what blossomed from it, a community woven together through shared dreams and struggles. But just as they began to lose themselves in hope, shadows shifted at the edge of the room. Grace felt a chill brush against her, her heart skipping a beat. What if not everyone was ready to embrace this change? What if resistance still lurked, waiting to reveal itself in the most unexpected ways? The echoes of laughter continued to flutter, but a chilling whisper of doubt crept in. Was this real connection, or just an illusion? As the event unfolded, Grace's heart raced with both excitement and concern, wondering how deep the roots of their new community could truly go. Would the walls of uncertainty hold them back, even in this moment of joy? The answer lingered in the air, heavy but vital, waiting to be discovered. The atmosphere shifted subtly when the doors swung wide, letting in that cool gust of air. Grace felt a chill run down her spine that tingled like a warning. She scanned the room, absorbing the laughter and the meaningful exchanges, yet the presence of the skeptics brought an edge to the festive mood. What were they thinking? Did their smiles mask doubts? She couldn't shake the feeling of fragility in the air, as if the community's newfound camaraderie was dangling by a thread. Jack was deeply engaged in conversation nearby, animated and radiant in his element. Grace watched him with admiration, his passion was infectious. When he caught her eye, he waved, his smile bright, but she quickly returned her gaze to the crowd, biting her lip. "Did you really think we wouldn't check this out?" a voice interrupted her thoughts. It was one of the skeptics, an older man named Mr. Thompson, with a gray mustache that danced as he spoke. Grace offered a cautious smile. "I hoped you'd come. We really want everyone involved." He surrounded her with an air of camaraderie that felt a bit forced. "Well, I must admit, this isn't what I expected. A garden? Seems like a lot of dirt and work for little reward." Her heartbeat quickened, she couldn't let him derail the spirit of the event. "It's so much more. It's about bringing us all together. The garden can foster community, create bonds that last. Isn't that worth something?" A moment passed before he nodded, albeit skeptically. "Maybe. But what if it doesn't work? This town has been through a lot." "Exactly," Grace replied, taking a small step closer, her resolve firming. "But if we don't try, it definitely won't work." He eyed her thoughtfully, sensing her sincerity. Behind them, laughter erupted again, cutting through the tension. It felt as if the success of the day hinged right on this moment. Suddenly, the sky truly opened up outside. Rain poured down more violently, drowning out the sound of conversation for an instant. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the lights flickered. "Don't let the rain drown your hopes," Jack shouted, rallying the group. "Let us make this an indoor celebration to remember." Cheers erupted as Grace felt a wave of warmth wash over her. The essence of community was rising, blossoming like the flowers they intended to plant. As they redirected energy back to the celebration, Grace turned her focus inward. She needed to drive her point home, not just for Mr. Thompson but for herself. We can't allow fear to hold us back. It's in taking risks that we find our strength. Together we can create something beautiful, even when it feels uncertain. Mr. Thompson scrutinized her, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, he broke into a smile, a reluctant acceptance for what could be. "All right, let's see what you two can do then. But I'm watching you." Laughter again filled the room, and Grace felt a swell of pride. A tiny spark flickered in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, they were turning the tide. But then, as the night carried on, an unsettling feeling lingered at the back of her mind. Was Mr. Thompson's acceptance genuine, or simply a way to keep an eye on their efforts? And what of the others who remained distant? As the party began to settle into a rhythm, an unexpected arrival drew attention. A woman Grace had never seen before stepped through the door, soaked from the rain but wearing an intense look that made every conversation hush. People turned to her, curious about what she would say. Grace's heart raced anew. Who was she, and why did she look as if she carried urgent news? What if she's come to expose a secret? Grace thought uneasily, her palms suddenly clammy. This felt like a turning point, a moment where shadows of doubt might emerge again. A chill danced along her spine as she exchanged uneasy looks with Jack. What lay beyond the door that could challenge everything they had built so far? And then the woman spoke. The woman's voice cut through the murmur of curiosity, steady yet charged with urgency. "I'm sorry to barge in like this," she began, her eyes sweeping the attendees. "My name is Sarah. I've been watching everything from the rain outside, and I have to say, this gathering means more than you realize." Grace felt her heart racing as the crowd leaned in. There was something both inviting and unsettling about Sarah's presence, a blend of warmth and weight. Jack stepped closer to Grace, his brow furrowed, mirroring her rising uncertainty. "What do you mean?" Jack asked, his voice calm, trying not to sound alarmed. Sarah took a breath. "I mean, what you're trying to build here, it's special. Community gardens are not just about growing food or flowers, they are about growing hope. I've seen towns transformed by initiatives like yours." But she hesitated, searching their faces for understanding. "But it's crucial to know what you're up against." Grace swallowed hard, sensing a wave of anticipation washing over the room. "What are you saying?" she pressed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Your community is divided," Sarah continued. "I know it. I can feel it. I've lived in small towns that crumbled under that division. You've got old beliefs, old wounds coming to the surface with almost every interaction. If you want this garden to thrive, you need to face those issues before planting your seeds. Otherwise, the rain won't be your only threat." The atmosphere thickened with tension. Mr. Thompson, who had been watching intently, raised an eyebrow. "What gives you the right to come here and tell us how to run our community?" "I grew up in a town much like this one," Sarah replied, unwavering. "I saw what happens when people ignore their differences. It's not enough to just bring people together, you have to address the rifts. It's messy but essential." Grace felt a chill sweep through the crowd. Was Sarah suggesting they couldn't just plant flowers and expect everything to get better? The joke of her earlier confidence danced mockingly in her mind. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice quieter this time. "The first step is to listen," Sarah suggested. "Each of you share your stories. Your fears and hopes. Make room for every voice. This garden, if done right, can be a living testament to your strength, but it has to come from genuine connection." From the back, another voice piped up. "Just talking isn't enough. We need action." "Exactly." Another echoed. "Right now, this feels like a lecture." Sarah turned to the source of the comments, her expression serious yet compassionate. "I understand your frustration. But realize this, every bud in your garden will grow with the strength of the roots beneath. If they are weak, the plant will not survive. Connect first, plant later." In the tension that followed, Grace could feel the pulse of doubt radiating through the room. Would they be strong enough to take these words to heart? Jack's hand found Grace's, and she squeezed it tightly. They shared a look, a silent agreement that this moment was significant whether they liked it or not. "It's scary," Grace thought. "But it's necessary. Can we really do it?" As conversation sparked throughout the room, Grace recognized the challenge laid before them. Would they step up and dive deep into the uncharted waters of emotion and connection? And with Sarah's arrival, did a glimmer of hope actually loom ahead, or was it yet another storm on the horizon? just as curiosity began to replace skepticism, Sarah's face turned serious again. "But be cautious," she warned, her voice lowering. "Not everyone wants to see this garden bloom." A ripple of tension returned, and Grace's heart sank. What does she mean? What could be lurking in the shadows of their budding community? The questions hung heavy in the air, echoing the uncertainty wrapped around them. With one last glance at Sarah, Grace realized they were only at the beginning. There were more obstacles ahead, obstacles that could either tear them apart or pull them together. What other secrets awaited them? How hard would they need to fight to nurture this dream? The moment Sarah finished speaking, the room seemed to hold its breath. Grace could practically hear the collective heartbeat of the crowd, a mixture of anxiety and curiosity ignited by the unexpected visit from this stranger. She felt the warmth of Jack's hand squeeze hers, grounding her in the whirlpool of emotions swirling around them. "Okay, everyone," she managed to say, raising her voice slightly to break the tension. "Let's take a step back and think about what Sarah is saying. We all came here today because we want to start something meaningful. If there are things we need to share, shouldn't we start now?" Some muttered softly, others exchanged apprehensive glances. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, seemingly on the verge of objecting again, but another voice, a familiar voice, interrupted. "Grace is right," it was Annie, an older woman known in the town for her fiery spirit. "We've danced around our issues for too long." Grace felt a flicker of hope ignite. Annie's voice was like a match in a dark room, casting light on their uncertainty. "We need to share what weighs on our hearts if we want this garden to actually grow." 20 or so heads nodded slowly, the hesitation easing as they shifted their focus toward Sarah and the possibility of embracing vulnerability. One by one, stories began to emerge: the childhood rivalries, the long-standing grudges, the missed opportunities for connection. Some were heartbreaking, others filled with regret, but all were steeped in the shared history of the town. Jack stood next to Grace, his fingers still intertwined with hers. She could feel the warmth radiating between them as the tension began to lift. It was not an easy process. Each shared experience seemed to peel away layers of discomfort, exposing old wounds once buried deep. As the conversation began to flow more freely, Sarah took a step back, allowing the attendees to engage with each other. Her eyes sparkled with encouragement as she observed the unfolding connections. One voice spoke louder than the rest, a young man named Eric, known for his passionate rants about local politics. "I've felt disconnected from all of you," he admitted, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I've always thought that nobody cared about what I had to say. But hearing you all share, it's like I'm finally included." The crowd murmured in agreement. More voices joined in, echoing Eric's sentiments. As the exchange continued, Grace could feel the garden they dreamed of starting begin to take root in the room. It wasn't just about tomatoes, cucumbers, and flowers anymore. It was about healing, about cultivating bonds that would transcend the dirt they worked with. But the moment was abruptly interrupted when a thunderous knock echoed through the old building. Everyone's heads turned toward the sound. Sarah's body tensed as the whispers of suspicion returned. "Not everyone wants to see this garden bloom." Her warning lingered like a dark cloud above them. Jack exchanged glances with Grace, his brow knitting in concern. "Who could that be?" he murmured, leaning closer to her. With a shaky breath, Grace walked toward the door. The anticipation hummed around her, fueled by the stories just shared and the walls of resistance that had just begun to crumble. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Behind that door lay the unknown, a potential adversary to their hopes, or maybe another unexpected ally. She paused, hand resting on the doorknob. Would it be a friend or foe? And as she turned the knob, anxiety coursed through her veins. What would await them on the other side? Would they be strong enough to rise to whatever challenge loomed ahead? With the door creaking open, a chilling gust blew through the room, and Grace's heart raced. Uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. What shadowy figure awaited them beyond the threshold? The door swung open, and the sharp gust caught Grace off guard. She instinctively stepped back, her heart pounding against her chest. Standing before her was a tall figure, cloaked in shadows. The dim light from the hall illuminated only part of their face, leaving the rest hidden in darkness. Grace squinted, trying to make out the features as the air thickened with tension. A moment past felt like an eternity. "Hello," the figure said, their voice low and gravelly. With an effort, Grace swallowed her fear. "Who are you?" she asked, face steady despite the tumult within. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a weathered face adorned with lines that told tales of hardship. It was Tom, a man who had once been a part of their community, but had withdrawn after a series of personal tragedies. The murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room as familiar faces broke into expressions of surprise and concern. "Tom?" came a voice from the back alley, disbelief mingled with hope. "Where have you been?" "I've been away." He took a deep breath, eyes scanning the room filled with both familiar and new faces. "I heard about the meeting, and I had to come." "What do you want, Tom?" Mr. Thompson pressed, a wary edge in his tone. "You've been gone for years. Why now?" Tom's gaze hardened but softened when he focused on Grace. "I needed to see if it's true. If what you all are trying to do is real. A garden, a community. I used to believe in that." Grace's heart twitched with sympathy. She recalled whispers of Tom's lost family, the accidents, the grief that had ravaged him. "It is real, Tom. We're all trying to grow something together," she said gently, taking a small step closer. His eyes flickered with a mix of emotions. "I've lost so much. I don't know if I can step back into this." He gestured vaguely, as if the pain were palpable in the air around them. The room fell silent. Grace could feel every gaze resting on them, a tapestry of shared experiences woven into the hush. "You're not alone," she said, her voice softer but resolute. "We all carry our burdens. But strength comes in sharing them. We want you here." Tom lowered his head, and for a moment, it seemed as though he might retreat back into the shadows. But then he gathered himself, lifting his face and meeting Grace's gaze. "What if I fail? What if it hurts too much?" "Then we help you," Annie declared, her voice rising again. "That's how we turn pain into something beautiful. That's how we grow." Surrounded by the warmth of acceptance, Grace felt the space around them shift. It became clear that the healing they sought was not just about personal stories but collective bravery. Jack moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on Grace's back. Grace could feel him silently supporting the moment as the crowd leaned in closer, united. Suddenly, the earlier stories that had been shared felt alive again with strength and vulnerability beside them. Tom took a step forward. "I want to try," he whispered. "I want to help. I want my life to mean more than what I lost." Cheers rippled through the group, a palpable relief flooding the room. In that moment, the garden became a reality not just in metaphor but in spirit. They had reached a breakthrough, and it felt as if everyone felt it, a blossoming hope, an eruption of connection. But then, just as the atmosphere lightened, the tension returned. Outside the door, ominous figures could be seen gathering. Tom's earlier fears echoed in Grace's mind. Not everyone wished to see their community thrive. "Do we have what it takes to defend this?" Tom asked, his voice low but firm. Before Grace could respond, the door shook with another powerful knock, this time, more insistent, more threatening. Anxiety flared anew in the room, as they all exchanged glances filled with determination and concern. Was the storm outside merely a metaphor, or did danger truly lurk at their doorstep? Grace took a deep breath, her pulse echoing in her ears. They needed to know. This was only the beginning, but the next chapter would require a collective strength they hadn't yet tapped into. "Let us face it. Together," Grace said, her voice steely and unwavering. "Are you with me?" Behind her, a chorus of voices rose strong and united, ready to confront whatever awaited them. The crowd surged around Grace, the energy crackling like static in the air. Standing at the threshold, she felt the spirit of unity ripple through the room. It was time to face whatever lay beyond the door, together. Together. The chorus echoed back, vibrant with determination. Jack stepped beside her, a protective aura surrounding him. We've come too far to turn back now. His voice was steady, a beacon of hope in the moment. With a firm grip on the doorknob, Grace turned it. The door creaked open, revealing shadows dancing in the dim light. Outside, a group of faces emerged, some familiar, others not, but all cloaked in an air of resistance. "What's going on in here?" called a man with a scowl, arms crossed defiantly against his chest. "This isn't how we handle things. Who are you to tell us how to rebuild?" Jack shot back, tension humming between them. An instant of silence followed, the air thick with uncertainty. Grace stepped forward, centering herself in the moment. She had to lead, even when faced with this confrontation. "No one here is telling anyone how to live or rebuild. We're all trying to come together." The man laughed bitterly. "You think a garden is going to fix everything? You're mistaken. It's a pretty idea, but it doesn't change reality." "Reality?" Grace asked, her voice rising to meet his challenge. "Reality is formed by our togetherness, our willingness to heal. This isn't just about planting seeds in the ground, it's about planting roots in our hearts and moving forward. We all hurt. We all need each other." As her words settled, the crowd murmured, sensing the weight of her conviction. She turned to the faces of her neighbors, those who had gathered to listen, to support. "What do you believe? What is our truth?" An old woman stepped forward from the back, her voice trembling but fierce. "I've seen this town struggle. Decisions made in shadows hurt us all. But I also see hope in what Grace and Jack are doing." One by one, others joined in, different stories intertwining into a collective heartbeat. The energy shifted, the earlier tension relaxing slightly as hearts softened. "We've all been impacted," Grace said, letting the warmth of vulnerability flow through her. "But isolation breeds despair, and we can't flourish alone. We need to share our fears, our hopes, our dreams. That's how we grow." Maybe it's time for a change," murmured Tom, his earlier fear melting away as he faced the others with newfound resolve. "We can acknowledge our struggles and still move forward. Together." The crowd shifted, hopeful glimmers igniting. The scowling man softened, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. "What's the first step, then?" "We invite you in," Grace said, her heart swelling as she moved back to face the shadows beyond the door. "Come in. Help us determine what this garden needs. Your voices matter." The hesitation that had permeated the room began to fade, and the tension lifted like a heavy fog. The man squared his shoulders, now looking less like an adversary and more like a potential ally. "Yeah, let us see if this can turn into something real," he replied, stepping forward. "We need to ensure everyone's voice is represented." The walls of doubt slowly began to fall as the crowd moved forward, fear replaced by a mutual understanding of their shared plight. They welcomed the newcomers, bridging the gap that had once separated them with sincerity and resolve. Grace's heart soared, tears pooling in her eyes. "We're building something beautiful here. Let us continue to share and listen." With hands joined, the room ignited with buzzing conversations and laughter, forging connections that transcended all the pain. Jack leaned in, whispering to her, "This is more than just a project now. It's a new chapter for all of us." "Yes," Grace whispered back, thrilled with hope. The garden had become so much more than she had ever dreamed. This was a movement, a commitment to revitalizing their community from the ground up. As the night wore on, voices filled the air, stories mingling with newfound understanding. They began sketching out a plan together, a blend of their fears, aspirations, and commitments. Hours passed, and with each moment, the atmosphere thrummed with excitement. Grace exchanged glances with Jack, both seeing visions bloom in the heart of their community, a garden in every sense of the word, but the real work had only just begun. Would their resolve sustain the storms to come? As they parted that night, feeling lighter and brighter, Grace knew that their journey would be riddled with challenges. But standing shoulder to shoulder with her neighbors and Jack, she felt ready to face whatever the future held. This was a family reborn, a community knitted together in shared dreams and unwavering hope. And in that shining moment, Grace whispered to herself, "Together, we can achieve anything." Now more than ever, she knew they would prove true change was possible. As she exited the community center, the first stars began to twinkle brightly in the night sky, illuminating their path to a bright future full of promise. Now, dear friends, if you felt the spark of hope in this story, it's time for you to make a difference. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Let us spread the hope.